Hi friends, please subscribe my channel for more scary and horror stories. Subscribe. Felix PewDiePie was visiting an old friend in Gothenburg when they decided to explore the countryside together. His friend mentioned an abandoned farmhouse on the edge of town, a place people avoided because of strange stories. But Felix thought it would make good footage for later, so they drove out there in the evening just before sunset. The house was broken down, its windows shattered, and its door hanging off the hinges. Inside it smelled of damp wood and rot. The floor creaked with every step, dust floating in the fading light. His friend joked that the place was haunted. Felix laughed, but his chest felt heavy as they walked deeper inside. They found old photographs scattered on the floor, black and white faces staring blankly back at them. One photo showed a family of 4 standing on the porch of the same house, but the image had scratches across every face, as if someone tried to erase their identity. When night fell, they decided to leave, but Felix realized he had dropped his camera bag inside. He went back alone. The house darker than before, his phone flashlight cutting through the shadows. The air inside was colder, his own footsteps echoing louder than before. He picked up his bag from the living room, but froze when he heard another step behind him, slow and heavy, like someone following his pace. He turned quickly. Nothing was there, only silence. But when he looked at the dusty floorboards, a second set of footprints appeared, right next to his, fresh ones, long and bare, pressing deep into the dust. Felix backed away, his heart hammering. He whispered hello, his voice trembling, and from the far end of the hall, a whisper answered back, quiet but sharp, repeating his words, hello. He bolted for the door, but when he stepped outside, the night felt wrong. The farmhouse windows glowed faintly with a dim yellow light, though there was no power in the building, and in one window upstairs, he swore he saw the outline of a tall figure staring down at him. Unmoving, Felix ran to the car and did not look back the next morning. When they returned, in daylight, the windows were shattered again. No glass, no light, no footprints anywhere inside, and no sign of the photographs they had seen scattered across the floor. To this day, Felix insists he remembers the whisper in his own voice, echoing from the dark hall, as if the house itself was repeating him. And he swears he will never set foot in that farmhouse again. PewDiePie was back home in Brighton, working late on a video. The room was quiet, except for the clicking of his keyboard and the soft hum of his computer. He often stayed up long past midnight editing. But that night, something about the silence felt different, heavier than usual, almost like the air itself was listening. Around 2 a.m, he heard a soft shuffle outside his office door. At first, he thought it was his dog, Maya, but when he called her name, there was no sound, no paws tapping on the floor, only silence. He brushed it off and went back to editing. Half an hour later, he noticed his headphones picking up faint static, even though no music or sound was playing. He unplugged them, but the static did not stop. It seemed to come from the computer itself, low whispers buried under the hiss. He leaned closer, and swore he heard his own name. Felix drawn out slowly in a voice he did not recognize. The hair on his arms stood straight. He reached for the desk lamp, but the bulb flickered weakly, then went out, leaving the monitor. As the only light in the room, the screen flickered for a second too, and in the reflection of the black editing window, he thought he saw a shadow behind him, tall and unmoving. He spun around quickly, but the room was empty. He stood up to check the hallway, the air colder outside his office, the rest of the house silent. His footsteps sounded too loud as he walked through the living room. He glanced at the windows and saw faint smudges on the glass handprints pressed against the inside, but higher than he could reach, long, narrow shapes stretched upward toward the ceiling. He backed slowly into his office, shutting the door, the whispers from the computer louder. Now, not words, just a low chant repeating over and over. He pulled the power cord. The screen went black, but the sound continued faint and steady from the speakers. He grabbed his phone light, shaking in his hand, and left the house. The street outside was empty, the wind sharp against his face. When he looked back at the window of his office, the light inside was on, even though he had unplugged everything, and in the glow he could see the shadow of a figure standing where his chair had been, its head bent forward as if staring into the screen that was no longer on. Felix spent the night at a friend's place, and when he returned the next morning, his office was dark, everything off and unplugged. No footprints, no handprints, no sign of the figure. But the chair was turned toward the window, as if something had been watching the street, waiting for him to come back. Hi friends, please subscribe my channel for more scary and horror stories. Subscribe.